So in years gone by, the A series has really encroached upon that base model Pixel, but that isn't the case in 2026. So how does the Pixel 10a stack up against the Pixel 10? Well, here's everything you need to know. If you're a true Pixel fan and want more Pixel, Android and everything else in between, then you are in the home of that kind of content. So slap that subscribe button like it owes you money and you'll get more stuff like this. Cheers. Google has drawn a line in the sand between its A series and base model devices for the first time since the Pixel 6a burst onto the scene with the best Tensor chip in its day. This now makes it easier to decipher, but it throws up some questions that we think need to be answered as to what makes something premium versus what makes something affordable. Luckily, we spent time with both handsets to help clear up any confusion, and you might notice right away that the Pixel 10 and Pixel 10a look really similar, but are very different in the hand. The Pixel 10 continues that premium iPhone-like evolution that we saw with the 9 series at first. We're talking that Gorilla Glass Victus 2 screen, a polished back, and those satin aluminium frame edges that feel incredibly dense and high-end when you're actually holding this phone caseless. It is a slab in the best way possible while being small enough for most people to manage. Conversely, the Pixel 10a continues the bump-free unibody design that the 9a was basically so refreshing to see last year. It's even flatter this time around as the camera is completely flush with the backplate. A really nice change. It's a subtle phone that still has that everyman look, and I think it begs to be used without a case, especially as it's made from cheaper materials. It technically does use those cheaper materials, but the totally matte finish sort of stands out and makes it look a bit more premium than it probably should. There is a significant difference in the weight of both these phones though, at over 20 grams. So the Pixel 10 is 21 grams, I think it is, heavier than the Pixel 10a, which at least doesn't seem significant on paper, but it is really noticeable when you're holding these. And it is super frustrating that Google didn't add Pixel Snap to the 10a, because I think it's one of the best additions to the Pixel 10 and something you'll kind of need to add with a case or extra accessory, which again adds bulk and extras to this phone, an extra cost. I feel like this could have been a really easy win, but alas, the A series is going to have to wait potentially till next year. It's also worth noting that the 10a is about a millimeter or so taller than the Pixel 10 too, so if you're looking for a smaller phone, no, it's actually slightly bigger than the Pixel 10. What's interesting though is that the Pixel 10a and Pixel 10 have almost identical screens with that 3000 nit peak brightness level, 120Hz refresh rate, and adaptive tone function as well, which is I think it's a first on the A series. You still get an optical scanner on the 10a, which is not quite as good as the ultrasonic on the Pixel 10. It is though impossible to tell these screens apart, save the slightly bigger bezels on the 10a. What is interesting is that the 10 can stay at its peak brightness for a little bit longer, if that matters to you, at least in our own testing. If you care about speaker quality, then the Pixel 10 has much better audio quality thanks to deeper, fuller bass on it. That's not to say that the 10a speakers are bad. I think they're fine in a pinch when watching videos or taking a call, but yeah, they're not quite up there with the best. Day-to-day as well, it was worth noting you might not notice significant performance degradation across both of these, especially using the A series, but as noted for the first time, there is a divergence in the specifications that does make the Pixel 10 an arguably better buy. The Tensor G4 processor in the 10a is absolutely fine, and it was absolutely fine with the 9 series last year. It's a little bit middling at best though, but it will do all the basics without having to break a sweat. While the Tensor G5 chip, it isn't all that much stronger than the G4, but it is stronger nonetheless. It allows for better on-device AI processing, but the efficiency gains are probably where you might notice a major difference. In theory, it shouldn't suffer from lockups or other issues in the same way, and paired with that extra 4GB of RAM, the Pixel 10 will help with overall smoothness there, especially with the system and the UI itself. For gaming and other intensive phone-based tasks, I don't think either of these phones are particularly ideal, but the Pixel 10 definitely has an edge because the chipset's slightly better. It is what it is. If you do go for the 256GB Pixel 10, you also will get that faster UFS 4.0 storage. It isn't available on the 128GB version, so that means if you do buy the base model, they're practically identical, UFS 3.1, which is likely the model most of you are going to go pick up anyway, as it's the cheapest. There is no gulf in the performance basically with that new hardware, but it is a minor gap if you do go for the slightly bigger hardware, bigger storage. Whether due to the chipset limitations though, the Pixel 10a does miss out on a few things like Pixel Screenshots, Magic Q, but you do get Pixel Studio, you get Pixel Journal, or you can download that, and even functions like Satellite SOS are available on the 10a, which is great to see. If you value these cutting edge AI features, you are only missing out on a few for what it's worth. One of the great levelers though for the Pixel 10a and Pixel 10 is that the main and ultra-wide camera lenses are absolutely identical at the rear of this. There are zero differences. It's only the addition of that 10.8 megapixel 5x optical zoom lens on the Pixel 10, a first for the base model, that actually gives it a slight edge, as it's backed by some AI enhancements which allows it to zoom up to 20 times versus the admittedly limited 8x zoom of the Pixel 10a. It's also worth noting that the 10a also lacks things like the ultra-wide selfie option at the front-facing camera, plus it has no autofocus for pets, but it does work with people. I think those are nice to haves rather than deal breakers in our opinion, but it is worth noting as it is a slightly cheaper model. In terms of the overall camera quality, aside from the 10's 20x zoom and the capabilities above 5x, which look really good, these cameras are identical and it's almost impossible to tell them apart when you are taking photos side by side. Maybe the photos on the 10A do look a little bit cooler from time to time, but it's such a minimal difference that could be explained by auto white balance settings. So yes, for all intents and purposes, these are the same cameras and produce the exact same results, which is a good thing and a bad thing, depending on which side of the fence you sit on. Even the camera features are practically the same, including the AI-powered camera coach. Which you prefer ultimately boils down to how much you value a telephoto lens. If you want that flexibility, which I probably would edge people to take on board, the Pixel 10 is objectively better for its camera capabilities. But what is surprising is that while the Pixel 10a does have the larger battery at 5,100 mAh compared to the 4,970 mAh Pixel 10, the longevity difference isn't all that much. It's actually negligible, and that's likely owed to the marginal efficiency gains of the Tensor G4 that is found in the Pixel 10 series. It's arguably the weakest area of any Pixels in general. Lifespan though is solid enough to keep most people content day to day, unless you're the kind of person who's stuck to your phone for 10+ hours a day, which you probably need to work on that yourself. Another area of difference is the charging. It's quite a weak area in general for Pixels. The wired charging speeds are still a lot lower than the competition at around 30 watts, although this is a lot lower in reality. Even the wireless charging speeds are similar. Despite the Pixel 10's Qi 2 magnetic support, it doesn't actually support those faster speeds, so it tops out at 15 watts, while the Pixel 10a supports just 10 watt wireless charging, although that is a bump over last year, which is again great to see. So to summarise, I've got to say the Pixel 10a is a bit of a strange beast. In effect, it's the 9a with a new wrap or a new skin, a 9a Plus or the 9a SE if you will. So this is actually the first time since the 6a launch with its own flagship specifications at that lower price point that most people should avoid the 10a and go straight to the Pixel 10 if you want the best of Google at a significant discount. We say that because the Pixel 10 has kind of come down closer to match the Pixel 10a's price in a lot of regions where this is available and sold. And its RRP or its MSRP, I do think the Pixel 10a is a really tough sell when the Pixel 9a exists. It comes with last year's chip, it has last year's camera, it has last year's design. So if you love the idea of the 10a and you need a new phone, then I do think it's a no-brainer to go for the more mature and significantly cheaper 9a, as you kind of really miss out on very, very little, plus you don't get ripped off. What do you reckon though? Let me know down in the comment sections below. Do you think that the Pixel 10 is enough of a jump over the 10a to make it a big upgrade, as it were? I think it's a really strange time to look at the Pixel series, but it's kind of good in some ways that there's separation between these devices. But hey, kind of is what it is at this point. Maybe that'll change again next year. Cheers for watching. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment sections below, and I'll speak to you later.